So I've been covering Caleb and Sophia videos lately, and we've finally gotten close to being caught up on all of them. I've done some of these before, but it's been a while for most of them, so I decided to do a full series on these videos. For those of you who might not already know, Caleb and Sophia are propaganda videos produced by Jehovah's Witnesses and designed to indoctrinate children. They slip them in under the guise of useful life lessons, though to me there's nothing useful about trying to jam Jehovah's Witness doctrine down kids' throats. Anyways, let's take a look at the next Caleb and Sophia video. It's lesson 29. It's called Be Humble. Okay, let's get into it. Now, I just want to give you guys a little background on cults and how they operate. Why this video isn't as simple as teaching kids to be humble. I've touched on this a little bit before, but the end result of a cult is to produce clones. Let's take a quick glance at the BITE model, the model we use to determine if something is a cult or not. BITE is an acronym which stands for Behavior Control, Information Control, Thought Control, and Emotion Control. Just look at Mormons, for example. When you talk to a Mormon about their beliefs, they get a perma-smile on their face. Their eyes are almost glassy. They get a certain inflection in their voice. Bear in mind, that's not all Mormons. It's just a common trait I've noticed. They act too happy. And they all act the same way. That's the cult mask slipping on. As time goes on and as cult indoctrination gets in deeper, the authentic, real, original identity of the person is slowly replaced with the one that best suits the cult. Now, I don't think it's necessarily a conscious, concerted effort by cult leaders to produce clones with traits that are most useful to them. Sometimes cult leaders encourage traits that are actually detrimental to their growth. For example, Jehovah's Witnesses would be a lot better off if they allowed or even encouraged their members to go to college. But instead, the leadership chose to lock down on the members and get them to kind of shut themselves in from the outside world. No worldly friends, no secular higher education, no talking to critics, that kind of thing. Mormonism is a little different. It's a lot more open about talking to ex-members than Jehovah's Witnesses is, for example, but when you talk to them, you see that glassy expression in their eyes. The same one you see in Heaven's Gate members, the same one you see in Jehovah's Witnesses, the same one you see in Scientologists and People's Temple members and the Moonies. Cults commonly use similar tactics to produce those masks, and even if they have different beliefs or ideals or doctrine, even if they use completely different holy books or no holy books at all, I can usually identify a cult member just by having a single conversation with them about their religion. Now, don't get me wrong, people have that glassy expression, that mask, without being members of an organization that used a system of rewards and punishments to mold that personality in them. You got things like flat earth believers who have a cult-like personality, but the personality wasn't formed out by an organization who'd set up a system of rewards and punishments with the intent to modify their behavior to produce that mask. But even so, you'll find that a lot of the time, flat earthers still have that glassy expression, that mask. It's because the people around them, their friends and their fellow flat earthers, are teaching them how to think and act. So what are some of the traits you find in a cult? What are some of the methods groups will use to control their members? I mentioned the BITE model earlier, so let's take a quick look at it. Here are a few things on behavior control. Do they promote dependence and obedience? Do they modify behavior with rewards and punishments? Do they dictate where and with whom you live? Restrict or control sexuality? Exploit you financially? Restrict leisure time and activities? Require you to seek permission for major decisions? Here are some from information control. Do they deliberately withhold or distort information? Forbid you from talking to ex-members and critics, divide information into insider versus outsider doctrine, generate and use propaganda extensively, require you to report thoughts, feelings, and activities to superiors. Now here's the most important category for our purposes. Here are some points under thought control. Do they instill black versus white, us versus them, good versus evil thinking? Do they change your identity, possibly even your name? Use loaded language and cliches to stop complex thought? Do they teach thought-stopping techniques to prevent critical thoughts? Allow only positive thoughts. Reject rational analysis, critical thinking, and doubt. And here's our final category, emotional control. Do they instill irrational fears of questioning or leaving the group? Label some emotions as evil, worldly, sinful, or wrong. Teach emotion-stopping techniques to prevent anger or homesickness. Promote feelings of guilt, shame, or unworthiness. Shower you with praise and attention, called love bombing. Threaten your friends and family, even if that threat comes in the form of coercing you into changing your relationship with them if they're critical or disbelieve. Do they shun you if you disobey or disbelieve? And finally, do they teach that there's no happiness or peace outside the group? So with all those points in mind, think about the name of this Caleb and Sophia video. It's called Be Humble. I remember Jehovah's Witnesses doing lots of stuff to form out my personality. There's nothing wrong with humility, but there is something wrong with modifying somebody's personality to make them what you want them to be, which is exactly what happened to me, for better or worse. Now let's give this Caleb and Sophia video a watch and see if we can pick out the methods Jehovah's Witnesses are using to modify people's behavior and produce that cult mask.
She thought that she could win, but there was no way. Next year, I'll be the fastest kid in the entire school.
That's 'cause I'm not in your school.
Oh, please. Remember last time when I beat you in front of the whole congregation?
Caleb, do you remember this story?
Oh yeah, that's the Tower of Babel.
That's right. Why were these people trying to build this tower?
So they could live there?
Actually, it was because they thought they were awesome and wanted to show off. But what did Jehovah think of that?
Oh, he didn't like it.
That's right. He even confused their languages so they would stop bragging.
Okay, let's pause here and think about this for a second. First of all, the Tower of Babel was not a real literal event. I'm sorry. That is an extremist belief. Bottom line. If you believe that to be a real literal event, then you should reevaluate your religious beliefs and think hard about whether or not you're an extremist, at least in some ways. Second, I don't feel like there's anything wrong with being proud of your accomplishments. Nobody likes it when people brag, but being proud of yourself for something you accomplished isn't wrong, and it shouldn't be considered wrong. That's what they're saying here. I think pride is considered one of the 7 deadly sins or something, along with gluttony and all of the others. I just want to put it in perspective and make sure we all understand there's nothing wrong with being proud of yourself. I don't care what the Bible has to say on the subject. I also don't think there's anything wrong with desiring something that your neighbor has. That's the basis of our economic systems in civilized societies. We couldn't survive without envy. And one more thing I wanted to mention. On the point about being proud of your accomplishments, I'm about to do something very contrary to what the video is teaching, contrary to what I grew up learning as a Jehovah's Witness, and contrary to what the Bible apparently seems to think about morality. I'm going to show you guys that I'm proud of one of my accomplishments. I have pride in something that I did. I'm prideful. Take a look at this. I just got a silver play button in the mail from YouTube for passing 100,000 subscribers. I have pride in myself for accomplishing that. I can be humble and be proud of my accomplishments at the same time. That's something that Jehovah's Witnesses like to flatly condemn. Okay, let's continue.
But at school, everyone brags.
I know. Lots of people brag. I have bragged too. But that's wrong.
It's not wrong to brag. It's just annoying. You'll lose friends if you do it. You aren't going to die in Armageddon. You aren't going to hell. They're making it out to be a moral issue. In my eyes, typically, social interaction is the great equalizer. The more you brag, the less people are going to want to be around you. That simple. No need to threaten kids out of it like they're subtly doing here.
When we brag or show off, it's like we're building a tower for ourselves, just like the Tower of Babel.
If I wanted to, I could set a new world record. No problem.
If you say so, but I'm better at basketball than you.
I was just messing around, but they say I'm a natural.
The higher up we try to put ourselves, the more dangerous it gets. Do you know why?
Because we'll eventually fall?
Yes.
Wait. That's a little enigmatic for me. What does "because we'll eventually fall" mean? Like I said, there's nothing wrong with having a healthy level of pride in our accomplishments. In fact, it's desirable. It's a good thing. What they were depicting here started wading into obnoxious territory. But like I said, I'm not sure what "because we'll eventually fall" means. Does that mean we won't live up to our own expectations? That seems like a good motivator to do better and try harder. Is it because people don't want to be around somebody who brags constantly? Is that what they mean by "will eventually fall"? I figure society and friendships are a pretty solid equalizer. People who brag to an annoying level have a hard time keeping friends. They'll either learn to tone it down or they won't make friends. I don't think simple bragging is a moral issue.
Because we'll eventually fall?
Yes. Also, 1 Peter 5:5 means that Jehovah doesn't want us acting like we are better than everyone else. Humble people don't need to brag, because Jehovah will make them feel good about themselves on the inside.
Remember, they're trying to form out people's personalities here. They're trying to create that cult mask, intentionally or not, making people think that humility is overly important, making them think that pride is wrong. That's the goal of this video. They're starting them as young as possible. They're supposed to be showing these videos to kids from the moment they show interest in TV, which is around 2 years old, all the way up until they're old enough to really start understanding what's being said by speakers at the meetings. This is Jehovah's Witnesses starting on forming out that cult mask as young as possible. The fact that these videos exist honestly makes me sick. This is propaganda in the truest sense. And if you remember, producing propaganda is a marker on the bite model. This is just another piece of evidence to show that Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult, as though we needed more. Anyways, that's all I've got for you. Don't forget to check me out on Patreon. I never know if my YouTube channel is going to be monetized or even exist from day to day. So Patreon gives me that added level of stability that I just couldn't have otherwise. If you like the work I do and you want to support me, that's a good way to do it. Also, check out my podcast where I talk about all kinds of different subjects. I also read extremist literature. I'm reading a Jehovah's Witness book called Pure Worship of Jehovah right now. Soon I'm hoping to go through some ISIS propaganda. All links are in the description as always. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.